Hey, I thought I'd share a couple of quick tips or hacks, I suppose, with you that will hopefully help you get more out of your RV's shore power connection. Now, these are things that I've done for a few years, but I realize I've never really shared any information about it. So I thought I'd spend a little bit of time and take you through this little mod that I did with my shore power cable for my 50 amp connection. Look at this thing. It's huge and hard to handle. So I'll show you what I did with that makes working with your shore power cable a little bit easier. And also I'll share another tip to help you get more power out of your pedestal, especially if you're on a 30 amp connection. So let's get right into it. So if you have a larger RV, say a fifth wheel or a motorhome like we do that has 50 amp electrical service, then you've got a really big shore power cable that you have to deal with. So the reason it's so thick is you've got these 4 cables in here that are like 6 gauge, and it makes for a very big, heavy cable, which is difficult to manage and wind up and store. And you're probably going to have a dedicated compartment where that cable goes. This really limits what you can do in terms of storage and how you can use your shore power cable. So one thing that I did on this rig, and I also did it on our Class C, which has a 30 amp electrical service, is take the original shore power cable, here it is right here, and cut it. You can see now that it's no longer attached to the RV. In fact, it's more of an extension cable. So I cut it, and then I created a female plug on this end and a male plug on this end, and then basically converted the bulk of the shore power cable into an extension cable. Now, my reasons for doing this were primarily to just give me more options for how I, first of all, utilize this compartment, and secondly, I have more options for how I can actually use my shore power cable and how I store my shore power cable. So first of all, we primarily are boondocking when we're out traveling, so it's not very often where I would actually break out my shore power connection and plug it in to something. Secondly, if you've messed around with your 50 amp shore power cable, it's really kind of a pain in the butt to manage, especially when the weather's cold. It just doesn't bend very well. So to constantly have to wrap it in a nice perfect little circle like this. Here's a new one actually, and make it nice and tidy so you can easily stick it in this compartment. It's just kind of a pain in the butt. And when I do get it in the compartment, it takes up so much awkward space that there isn't really much else I can store in here, because it's just this cord. When I plug it in, I can just run it through here and then simply connect it like that, and then I just, like normal, plug the other end into the pedestal, and I have my connection. Now, when I'm done, I kill the power, plug it, and I don't have to wind it up real tight and tidy. I can store it in a compartment that just has more space. I usually put it in a spot that has hoses and other things like that. When I need it, I take it out and I plug it in. Works great. And now, without having to worry about this big cord, I can make better use of this space and actually store a few additional things in here as well. All right, now to make this extension cable out of your shore power cable, you're gonna need to have a way to strip back this insulation. I'm gonna use a utility knife to do this. You're also going to want to pick up some extra plugs. Now, you can get these off Amazon. I'll link to all this stuff below in the video description. But yeah, easy to do. I'll wire one up here for you just so you can see. Now if you're doing a 30 amp one, obviously you got a 30 amp cable, same thing, except it has 3 slightly smaller wires inside instead of 4, and you can just pick up like 30 amp connectors as well. So let's go ahead and wire up this 50 amp and I'll show you how that works. Now the hardest part is probably going to be stripping away this this insulation on the 50 amp cable. So you're gonna have to use probably let me see, not that one, a utility knife to cut it, and we'll just slowly kind of trim it away until we can get through. And I've learned from experience that I should wear gloves when I do this because I have a tendency to bleed. And you want to make sure this is a nice sharp knife. What I like to do is carry a little sharpener, and I'll show that to you real quick. Yeah, so here's a little sharpener. So if you find yourself going through a lot of these utility knife blades, I just carry this little sharpener, and then every once in a while I'll just sharpen up this utility knife blade, and then you're good to go for a while longer, and you don't have to constantly swap out your utility blades. So yeah, I would just kind of slowly, oh look at that, it's cutting through just like butter. Just slowly work your way around the cable like that until both ends meet. What I like to not do is not cut all the way through the first time. Then I'm going to take a lateral cut like that, and then I want to be able to peel away the final section of rubber by hand, so you know you're not cutting through anything. The green and the white are my ground and my neutral, and then the red is going to typically be my first leg of the hot 120 volt AC, and this black one's going to be the second leg of the 120 volt AC. So these are going to be independent. So I'm going to take my plug now and take a small screwdriver and remove these screws that are holding it together. There's one on either side, a couple on either side, and there's one in the middle here as well. So get that one out. Okay, loosen it up, and then this plug should come apart. Okay, there we go. So this strain relief little nut here, this little bracket for the strain relief is gonna go in through these 2 holes. So we want to make sure that that it's past the shielding here. So we want it to kind of be like that. So we want to start about there, and then cut the other lines to line up accordingly. So we've just kind of laid things out here, and it's going to be about there, and yeah, neutral is going to be there, the black one's going to be there, the red's going to be there, and the green, which is the ground, is going to go around the side and like that. And then get a little marker and just make some marks on the cable themselves, so then I can cut them correctly. Okay, that's going to be about like that. Red is going to be about to there. The white is going to be in the neutral, so that's going to be about there, and then the black to there. So I'm going to take a large wire cutter. I'm going to cut these down to size, just like that. And these are 6 gauge cable, so they're fairly thick, and you can see the insulation is very thick. So I'm going to cut these where I drew the little mark, and it should all line up just perfectly, hopefully. Okay. Okay, so here's what I got. It's gonna be like this. I'm gonna strip about a little over 1/2 inch off of that cable for each cable. I'm just gonna use my utility knife for that as well. Yeah. Careful not to cut any wires or your finger. Now if you do have a wire stripper like this, you could probably use it. It's a little bit kind of pushing the limit of this thing, but like it'll do part of it. I just need to get the right length, but it does work. Okay, I've got all my wires stripped to the right length here, and I can start assembling this plug. Before I do, I want to put this little sleeve over the top. This is gonna weatherproof it a little bit, but it has to go on first. So I'm gonna slide this over like so. Now I'll go ahead and wire up these connections, and it's easier just to kind of take these out one at a time, and it just makes it easier to work with. So I'm going to start with the ground. Clean this up a little bit. I'm going to slide it in. Now the ground's going to come in at a slight angle, so I'm going to kind of hold it at the angle that it's going to go in. I'm going to take my screwdriver and tighten it down. It's best to use a flathead for some of these because you just get more torque here. You really want it nice and tight. Okay, so that'll go like that. Let's do the neutral. So that's going to go like so. All right. We'll tighten down the nut. Okay, I've got all the connections on each cable in place. Now I can just slide them back into their correct spot and then put this plug back together. It's just do this. It's much easier to do it this way. Having made several of these, I can tell you from experience, this is definitely the easier way to go. All right, get these in here. Locked down. Getting this attached first. All right, that should be good. Should fit back on there nicely. There we go. Okay, and we are done. We have a new plug here. Nice little handle. Good to go. Now, when I do want to connect to a 50 amp service using my normal 50 amp shore power cable, I also want to use my big surge protector here that's for 50 amp. But I don't need to keep it connected to the pedestal for everyone to see. Now what I'll do is I'll plug it in at first just to double check things to make sure that the power is good. But then I'll actually connect it here in this compartment. And then I'll keep the surge protector itself in here, and then just route the shore power cable up inside. And I don't have to worry about anybody stealing my surge protector, which, you know, I know there's a lock on it and stuff, but it's just nice to keep it out of sight. Now let's just say that we're mooch docking, or we want to connect to a 30 amp or a 20 amp source for some reason. So we can just make all those connections here in the compartment. So I'll start with this 50 amp to 30 amp dog bone here. Get that on there. So I can put a surge protector on it. Then I can put a 120 or 110, 15, whatever it is, amp adapter on here. Roll this all up inside here, and then use a really heavy gauge extension cord to, say, connect to, you know, a standard, you know, 20 amp or 15 amp receptacle. And now I don't have to run my big cable. I could just run this extension cord, oops, wrong end, inside here, and then just plug this in and leave this laying outside. All right, so let's say that you are plugged into a 30 amp receptacle at the campsite, and you might need a little extra power for, I don't know, whatever. And there's an available 50 amp plug over there that you're not using, and you just usually just have it turned off. Well, what you need is to carry one of these. So check it out. It's a 50 amp plug, and it splits both legs of the 50 amp into two separate 20 amp outlets. If you are familiar with the 50 amp setup, so we have a ground and we have our neutral line right here, and each one of these hot sides on a 50 amp plug can support up to 50 amps on each side. So what we have here is a split power source, basically. So you see one's yellow, one's gray. So if we check it on the meter, one of these sides is tied to one hot line of the 50 amp, and the other side is tied to the other hot line on the 50 amp. So essentially we have two, we can expand it up to two additional high-powered circuits, and each one of them can put out 20 amps a piece. So let's crack open the meter and I'll show you how these are wired. All right, so I'm going to put this meter in to do a ohms check, so basically continuity mode, and set it up so it will beep when I make a connection. So if we check, let's see this hot side right here. It's going to touch it there, and then I'm going to touch it to the hot line here. See? Got a connection. If I do it to the other side, there's nothing. So it's not connected to that side at all. So this hot lead is connected to the gray side. Now the yellow side is connected to this one here. So we attach that there, and then we'll touch it in here. We've got a connection here and there. So this other plug here, the little T in it, is our neutral. So that's going to be shared. So the neutral is this one here on the bottom. So then we should see a connection there, a connection to that neutral, and a connection to the other leg, neutral, and the other one. So the neutral is going to be shared across both of those. And the same is true with the ground here at the top. If I connect the ground, all the grounds are connected as well. So yeah, pretty nice little adapter cord. And the cool thing about this is it also has a 20 amp circuit breaker on each circuit. So each side of these has its own dedicated circuit breaker. Plug it into our 50 amp source, and we've got our auxiliary plugs here. Now the one thing that I'll mention about it is that it's not rated for outside weather. So if you do see yourself using it on a more permanent basis, I would suggest enclosing this in a Tupperware container or something to keep it dry in case it's going to rain. But yeah, pretty handy. Now let me know in the comments if you can think of ways that you would use this this extra plug. I think it's a pretty handy thing to have around. Now if you do end up trying out this plug, it's rated for 20 amps, so make sure that you have a nice heavy gauge 20 amp rated extension cord to plug into it. So I keep a couple of these with me, and really they really come in handy. You can extend them or you can have two, and it works pretty well. But yeah, if you can think of any other tips related to shore power, definitely let us know. And, you know, as always, make sure you kill the power before you're working on anything. Be safe, and I will see you in the next one. So take it easy.